Please welcome Juanjo Frances, Chief Information Officer, Merck Animal Health, and Jared Jocelyn, SVP and Global Head of Digital Health, Sanofi, for a keynote fireside chat on redesigning engagement and operating models for the AI era. Please welcome them.
Thank you, thank you. I can assure you, you look a lot more impressive from this side than you should try it. I don't think that there would be better people than you and I to introduce more chaos to the chaos. Jared is an innovator. I'm mostly worried about things working. And so our dialogue, I'm sure, is going to provide different perspectives. We were making jokes before about whether it is football or soccer. I'm from Barcelona. I can assure you it is football. So having said that, well, you don't introduce yourself, Jared.
I think we're too close to each other.
Yeah? OK, maybe. Let's get more separated so our views keep separating, right?
There we go.
Yeah.
All right. Jared Jocelyn, I'm the Senior Vice President at Sanofi for what we call Digital Health and Edge. It's an innovation group. It's like, I guess the easiest way to describe it is kind of if you took a Google X and you plopped it in and put a bunch of misfits in it and then say, go create. That's effectively what we do. We try to create these new care delivery systems, care models, different ways in which we do patient engagement, new AI tools so that we can identify patients. The most recent was published at ADA, where we can find now asymptomatic future type 1 diabetes patients like myself before they DKA. So there's a lot of different possibilities that we tend to explore and look at from a rare disease and
that's awesome.
Broader perspective.
And I'm Juanjo. I had a long career in the industry. I've been in different positions, always in human health. So don't be surprised I'm in animal health right now. I just decided to change because a lot of the things that we can discuss about digital health actually are possible in animals and are very difficult to do in humans. So I thought this is going to be fun. And that's what I'm doing since the last 3 months, right? Yeah, good. So let's go. We have prepared a few questions. We can deviate from the questions at any given point. And we will give time for you guys to ask any question at the end. I think we planned roughly 20 minutes. And then we'll have 10 minutes for Q&A in case you have any question. So Jared, you're going to start with the first one. So old versus new ways of working. I know where he's going to go. So biopharma commercial model. It's siloed teams. We all know that. It's, you got marketing, sales, medical, then the online people, more or less siloed. The digital guys, in the case of Jared, also disconnected. So with AI, do we need to change that model? How it needs to change? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so at Sanofi, we're already changing it. You'll hear Marianne talk about it a little bit later today, where we're deploying Turing, which is an automatic or an AI-enabled engagement model with the HCP for content and a number of other things. And we're taking that further and further, which allows us to adjust the sales model. But ultimately, when we talk about AI, the thing that I would say is, AI doesn't feed on silos. AI feeds on reimagining and reconnecting those silos so you have a continuous stream of data and intelligence to make it easier and better from a patient experience or a prescriber experience perspective. So do we need to redo the model? Hell yes. Pharma's been doing it the same way for 100 years, almost, right? Yeah. So it's the only industry in the world that's done it the same way for 100 years and thinks that we should continue doing it the same way. That's just the mark of somebody that's going to get disrupted. Now, I can't tell if it's going to be 2 years or 5 years, but it's going to happen because it's happened in every other industry before it. Yeah. The only thing that protects it is the regulatory apparatus that sits around it, but that moat, that's a leaky boat, if you will, right now.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with you. I think there is a need for change. However, it is very difficult to change because the last 100 years it worked. And the silos are optimized for stability and compliance, right? And so it's going to be difficult for that change. But I do agree with you. It needs to change. We need to dissolve those silos thinking about how you create product squads with multifunctional teams that align with business objectives that are clear and measurable, so that, in my case, I always say to my IT team, like, I don't care if you deploy the system, nobody's using it, so that's not going to work. What it is important is actually, are we getting the return for the marketing campaign that we are running? And I do not care whether the system has a given feature or another, or was late, or deployed on budget, if we are not achieving that outcome. So I think having a joint set of objectives that are shared across the team are super important to start doing this change. So I agree with you.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the one thing that I observe in a lot of cases is it's not I don't think that people disagree that you should break down silos, but I think they're so entrenched. Yeah. It's a mindset issue, yeah. And you have to break and change a mindset. We had an interesting debate the other day because we were asked to give a review of some of the compliance operating procedures within Sanofi, which maybe we were too transparent. But one of the things that we actually asked them was, when was the last time that you guys sat around and celebrated a failure? Like, you didn't do something right, you failed at it, you celebrated it, and then learned from it, right? When we developed things on the digital side or back at Google, we used to throw parties because we learned something, right? We like to fail.
So important.
Because when we get to the next thing, there was no answer to that question. And that's part of the mindset shift. You have to be okay with failure in order to stretch yourself to the new thing.
I agree. It builds a trust culture.
Right.
Yeah. So if we think about this dissolution of silos and then AI and all that, so what happens with the reps? Do we kill the reps and eliminate all these positions?
Well, I hope we're not killing people.
No, not killing people. You know what I mean.
So I think it's an evolution, right? Yeah. So look, you've got systems now that can, in milliseconds, do what it took a long period of time for reps to do. You also need to think about it differently. We in pharma spend a lot of time talking about brand, right? That's great. Go out on the street and ask somebody who Lilly is, who Sanofi is. They might know Lilly now because of the weight loss drug, right? But they don't know who Sanofi is. We've done this. We've asked this question. Yeah. They don't know who Merck is. And sometimes they know the drug if they're on the drug, right? So I think we think about it in the wrong way in many ways. And if COVID has taught us anything, is that you didn't see a precipitous decline in your sales and your relationships with the docs during COVID, right? So that it just tells you that rep model is antiquated, and in a lot of cases, it's hard to get back into the doc office. So one of the things that we tried, just to throw it out there, is in Taiwan, we changed the model entirely. The rep was not a Sanofi brand ambassador or drug ambassador. They supported the doc. The doc needed something, they had a question, where's this content? Didn't matter if it was our brand, it was somebody else's brand. That was their job. And we measured them and we paid them on NPS, right? How did the doctor rate you? Oh. Right, so different model entirely different and better outcome that came from it. I won't be overly specific on this, but it resulted in a much better brand positioning and outcome and had no dilution to the effect. The difference was I could run that model with 4 reps versus the 40 reps we had before. Right, so there is going to be some dissolution of the jobs for sure, but I think there's a different and better way to do it. And then the third thing I'd say is the model's changing. Direct to consumer exists now, right? The consumer's more active. We forced that activity rate. And so you're going to have to change the way you do business and the models in which you deploy.
Yeah. I agree with you, and we can take offline the Taiwan thing because I'm interested how you circumvent the issue of transfer of value in that scenario. But having said that, the reps are there to stay. With AI, what it is absolutely critical is that you always keep the human in the loop. Because AI, what it gives you is scale, is repeatability, is learning at massive scale, but it doesn't give you trust. trust is coming from humans. You do trust a lawyer that bets a certain promotional material. You will trust the medical expert. You will trust a person. But trust is coming from the human, and I think that that's a fundamental thing that needs to stay, as well as the personal relationship.
Yeah, I hear that. I would say we should do a study where we ask the provider if they trust the sales rep. Because my guess is it's probably not going to be too far, just like anybody that's a sales rep. I think the trust actually comes from the MSL, who's that is viewed on the equivalent range. So I think you'd see a repositioning of the way in which you go to market, right? Because ultimately, what do we want drug companies competing on? Best-in-class drugs to the right patient at the right time. And sometimes that's a generic that fits with the right patient at right time, right fit, right? And sometimes that's a specialty drug that's suited for that particular patient. That medical to medical trust is extremely important. Yeah. And that level of kind of high fidelity, high quality trust between the two systems is important. How much the human factors into that trust equation when we're talking about delivery of like sales materials, which are highly curated, is a different question.
No, that's fair. But if you let's flip the question, and it's not about trust; it's also about accountability. And who is accountable? The algorithm, the large language model.
Yeah.
Is it IT? Like always, this is always our fault. Who is accountable in those scenarios? If we have an agent that deploys the wrong promo material to the wrong customer or wrong time, who is accountable?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question because I think pharma is always looking for who to point the finger at, which is interesting when you come outside the industry. So, do we point to the algorithm and say that the algorithm's accountable when the autopilot fails and a plane crashes? No. We look at what was the quality, how did that happen, what other failures potentially existed, right, within that particular system, and what was the company's oversight of that matter. I think what you have to think about is what is the repositioning of the role, right? So your marketing and your brand lead is now going to have some technical chops in the sense of understanding how these models work, how they input and be more active within that model design. So you're not eliminating the human from the process, but when you train these models, as you know, there's got to be a human in the loop that's providing the gold standard to the outcome that you're deriving as a company.
Absolutely.
Right? Because we make this illusion that an AI is not faulty or should be 99%, I think was mentioned earlier. It's not 99%. But you know who's also not 99%? Nobody in this room, right? Like when we did fundus imaging at Google, the best ophthalmologists in the world were at 60% identification of diabetic retinopathy. The model was at 96%. And they would complain about the inaccuracy of the model. Right? Yeah. It's a thing I used to say, which I haven't said in a long time, but you go to a Phillies game or a soccer game. I don't know the team
football.
Here. But yeah, we go to a football game. And I can walk up, not a Phillies fan, sorry, but I go get a t-shirt, right? I can go get a t-shirt there if I sign up for a credit card. Well, there's one thing I write down when I sign up for a credit card. What is that thing? It's my social security number, right? That's pretty risky here in the US. If I give you my social security number, you can take my identity. Now, what if that same credit card had required that I write down my genetic code? So it takes a day, I write it all down, and I get my t-shirt. We'd say no, absolutely not, right? One can destroy my life. I don't know what you're doing with my genetic code. Maybe you're taking it to Ireland and you're cloning another me, which I would do some work. But it's a perception versus reality game when we talk about healthcare. There's a lot more risky things than some of the things we're talking about here.
And I agree with you. I mean, the human must be in the loop.
Right.
Algorithms will never be accountable, at least not for the time being, at least until we get into advanced general intelligence, then maybe. But for now, for the time being, as far as I can say, humans will be always accountable. So let me change a little bit.
Sure.
Now, you are doing AI at Sanofi, I'm doing AI at Merck. Johnson & Johnson, I'm sure you guys are doing AI. Who is not doing AI? So if we all do AI, is there a competitive advantage there? Does it matter?
No.
Okay.
No, because like, look, everybody can do AI. Just like you have to think about AI as a tool.
Yeah.
You know, if everybody has a hammer, we can all hit a nail. That's great. What am I actually using the tool for, and what are the use cases that it produces? We get too lost. I'll reflect a quote that I heard from Anthropic's life science head. And she said, everybody in pharma, because that's who she works with, is looking at operational AI. How do I make something more efficient, faster, et cetera? Now, when I hear that, I think commodity AI, right? We're spending gobs and hundreds of millions, billions of dollars in pharma to make our operations more efficient. Why are we doing that? We're within our own silo. We're looking at it and we're saying, this is the way the system exists, so I'm gonna make it better, right? I'm gonna make it faster, I'm gonna make it more efficient. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but there's also billions of dollars being funneled into AI outside of pharma that can equally do that, right? You may be 6 months ahead, J&J may be 6 months ahead of Merck, or who are 3 months ahead of Sanofi, but in 12 months, we'll all be at the same place, right? Because the commodity AI will diffuse. And thus, you haven't changed the competitive position. The winner is the one that figures out how to use the tool differently to deliver, to engage the patient, to engage the new system differently, and to change the model or the apparatus. That will take them up here. But that's kind of Horizon 1, Horizon 2 thinking, not, you know, how do I improve my existing business?
Yeah, there was years ago at Harvard Business Review, there was this paper about, it was called IT Doesn't Matter. And as an IT professional, I got heavily offended, of course. When you read it, actually had a point, because the access to technology nowadays, and now to AI, is very easy. Everybody can do it. You do not need large capital investments to actually have that. Therefore, the differentiation will not come from AI. What it will come is from you having the right culture, having the right commercial teams that are integrated with multifunctional teams that know how to use that. From you owning data sets that nobody else has. Every data set you can buy out there, your competitor has it too. The difference is that you have data that nobody else has, and if you combine your own data, which typically you don't care about it, the data that you have internally with commercial data, that's unique. I don't have it, nobody else has it. And so the combination of, and then of course, the necessary IT investments, I need to say that, that are integrated that allow you to execute at speed. But it all starts with culture, with incentives well aligned, with the tools available, with the data well organized. If you don't have these things, then you have a problem. And that's difficult. Accessing AI and LLMs, that's a piece of cake. You can do it anytime.
Yeah, I mean, I would just to tack onto that, I think it's ultimately transformation comes from a different way of thinking. So instead of saying I'm in my own box, imagine there is no box, right? It's a blank sheet of paper. How would you go to market today if you were going to disrupt yourself and start from that perspective? Because the thinking is limited by the individuals within the organization, and you may have spits and starts, but if you don't foster it, if you don't encourage it, you're going to continue to make a better mousetrap. You're going to be Kodak, right, who had the digital camera well in advance. You're going to be Blockbuster, who had an opportunity to buy Netflix and thought everybody still wanted to come in and get DVDs, right? And we can say it's pharma, and it has been protected, and it does trail about 10 years every other industry. But this is a wave that's coming faster and harder than I think most have seen in their lifetimes. But it's happened before. Ford Model T, right? Yeah. There were 100,000 horses walking down the streets in New York. I don't know how many in Philly. And everybody said, oh, it'll take 10, 20 years before the cars take over. 3 years, no horses. 3 years, right? And that's all because Ford figured out how to take electricity, apply it to a manufacturing line, and produce cars at scale that made them cheap, right? So it's the how they did it, not the electricity. The electricity is the commodity. Right now, AI is the commodity, right? And you're not going to be better than Google at machine learning. They've got 20,000 people that do that, right? They had 20,000 people when I was there, so it's probably 50,000 now. But they're spending hundreds of billions of dollars. What you can be better at is knowing the industry better, and healthcare is a murky kind of circuitous industry, which anybody that comes into is confused why it operates, right? Exactly. That's where you can be better.
Hey, one last question. We have 10 minutes still to go, but I'm really interested in that question for your opinion. AI for patients. We have seen many investment in digital health coming from the industry, and in general, when it came from the pharma industry, and there are many pilots that never scale up, at least I've never seen. Is that going to change with AI? What do you think? Real quick.
Yes is the short answer. So I'll give you a couple of facts. So 84 minutes, 525,600. So we're not watching Rent, but you all have 525,600 minutes in a given year. 84 minutes is the amount of average time in which you will engage with the clinical system. $12 trillion, the amount of money that we spend in the clinical system for healthcare on a global basis. That's 0.01%, best case if I round up. It's the only industry in the world, from an engagement perspective, where we take $12 trillion, the largest industry, and we attack 0.01% of the engagement time. If we think that's going to hold in the age of AI, in the age of consumerization, in the age of consumer empowerment, we're fooling ourselves. The math doesn't add up. Doesn't make sense. Add on top of that, how many people are getting older? We'll have 2 billion seniors by 2030 or 2035. We'll have 11 million less docs, meaning that your access to healthcare is much more difficult. So the 18-month waiting list for Medicaid is going to go up.
Yeah.
And then you see the Roes and the Hims and the Hers and the Lillys and the Pfizers all doing something different on the direct-to-consumer. We'll see where that shakes out. But ultimately, at some point, somebody's going to say it's not about the drug and it's not about the brand, it's about the person, and they're going to change the model and it's going to flip, and we need to be ready for it because the patients are looking for it.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I concur with your opinion. I just don't know whether it will be driven by us, the industry, or the governments or insurance company. But we'll see. Exciting. Any question from the audience? We still have 6 minutes and a half, and I promise somebody will come and give you a mic. Oh, she's coming from there. I saw the gentleman here and then Georgia there. In this table and then Georgia there, just in the middle. Can you? Okay, and then Georgia just behind.
Hi, Ray Panettiere from Rutgers University. As a provider, I love the model change, right? I think that will be disruptive and transformative. But what I didn't hear is the greatest impact to us as managed care has nothing to do often with the choice of the drug we as a provider wants to give a patient. It's whether managed care will allow it. And there is no rhyme or reason except for lowest price and rebating. It's not the efficacy of the drug. So how in your model of AI do you engage managed care so that the provider can actually determine which drug they want to use? Because right now it's out of the provider's hands.
Well, yeah, so there's, off the top of my head, 9 different AI prior auth companies. It'll eventually become a commodity-based business for AI deployment for providers to be able to do prior auth. I think the question you're asking is a bit more of a fundamental one, so I'll be a little careful with it. How we do pricing and drug availability in the U.S. is messed up. It's just the simple way to say it. It's not like that in any other country that I can think of. And so that's part of the problem. But the other thing that is concerning to me is more a math question where pharma has a lot of different innovation. We talk about pharma price quite a bit. I think it's about 8 to 9% now of the overall spend in the $4 trillion in the US. And if you go outside the US, it's about 5 to 6%. The quality life adjusted years that it accounts for, though, is 60%, right? So we talk a lot about drug pricing. Why do we talk about that? It's the easiest thing to see. But in reality, it's kind of the red herring of the discussion. We're not talking about the entirety of the system. And so what we really need to be doing is allowing the provider to make the choice as to what's the best drug. And then that's up to, again, best in class, best for person, et cetera, et cetera. And so, but that is a bit of a governmental debate along with, the enablement of PBMs, which don't exist other places, and things like that, which are stronger or more difficult to deal with.
Yeah, completely agree with you. There's one, we use AI also to make, today we have focused our discussion around how we use AI to engage in a different way with our customers. We do use AI to create better products too. And we haven't spoke about that, but we could. And so the problem that you are putting in hand is really a US-based one, which is a very important market, don't get me wrong. And I have my own opinion about that, but
yeah, I mean, look, it's the propagation of these type of systems. We want to encourage it, but it's also, there's a broader policy issue in the United States that needs to be addressed here, especially for managed care organizations to get the right drug at the right time. Because there's a number of, well, I need to be careful. Yeah, I'll say it this way. There are a number of times where we make illogical decisions on how we we create availability of a drug that may not make sense. And I'll use a type 1 myself as in particular. As a type 1 patient, you'll find that the insulin that you use, like if I'm using an a basal insulin, my system will start to become somewhat inoculated by it. It'll be less effective. But if I switch the insulin to a different brand or same brand, different type, it'll work a little bit better for those 3 years, and then I need to do it again. That's a clinical decision that is not built into tiered formulary design. Yeah. And that's a problem. Yeah. So.
Georgia.
Yes, thank you. You're making a lot of great points in terms of where we're starting with AI. We're all going to start in the places that we have been working all the time in terms of optimizing operations, efficiency within the silo. We did it with digital, now we're doing it with AI. And then, as you mentioned, then you're looking at the operating model. Do we need salespeople or the MSLs, or maybe eventually you have voice recognition and an AI system with, of course, the MSL in the loop. That kind of changes the whole operation. My question is, there is a real recognition that the operating model of pharma has to change, and it will change. The question is pharma rethinking how it operates in the ecosystem of healthcare, where today Amazon can deliver a toothpick in 24 hours. What is the role of pharma in the future? And in this ecosystem of distributors and HMOs and all that, that adds tremendous cost to medicine, and we know it doesn't, we cannot afford it anymore. It's getting to a point where you cannot afford medicine anymore. So are you rethinking the operating model of pharma, not just inside the company, but outside, overall in the healthcare ecosystem?
Yeah, I think I will comment very briefly on that one. First, because I'm not an expert. And the second reason is because that is a huge debate, as you know, in the US arena nowadays. It's what is the role of PBMs, what's the role of insurance, and how the healthcare sector needs to be restructured. And as the gentleman that made the first question, it's all related. And it's very unclear at the moment. It's adding a lot of risk for the healthcare sector in this country because things are going to change, and change might not be good, might be very, very good. But uncertainty is generally not good for business. So at the moment, everybody's working on that, but I don't have a position to share.
Yeah, I would say it's a choice. I can't speak for other pharma companies. It's a choice that you have to make. You can be a value-added supplier into the system, or you can help the system create value. And it's individual by individual, group by group. What our team specifically does at Sanofi is exactly that. How do we reimagine care delivery? So within the confines of the broader ecosystem on a global basis in the countries, et cetera, how do I create a system so that the family caregivers are more involved? How do I create a system so that not only the physicians who are going to have less and less time available for the patients, but the pharmacist, the social worker, the community worker, and then how do I enable that with AI? We have to be. There was a really good quote by the former minister of Ireland, and I'm going to butcher it, but there was a call to action basically to say that pharma hides behind the parapet. Because the problem with pricing and this whole discussion, you mentioned it as well, on we can't afford medicine. That's not true. Medicine is less than 10% of the overall spend versus 60% of the quality life years. If you don't have the medicine, what are we doing, right? We're back in the 30s or the 20s. So I think that the way in which we view that is different. We have a lot of waste, a lot of inefficiency in the system. We don't spend time on that because it's hard to see and hard to address. It's easy to attack this thing. And so you have to look at the system writ large. How do I create a more efficient and effective operating system for the primary user? And the primary user is the patient, not the system. And we've designed a system that serves the system. And then we wonder why it doesn't work.
Thank you, Jared. So with that, thank you, everyone. My pleasure to be here. Thank you.